The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us one of these, I can't believe this person hasn't been on the show yet, guests. I've been bugging him for a very, very long time, repeatedly, to do the show. He replied with several slurs, most of them racial. But finally, we have my fellow anarchist, Luke Rudkowski is here, frequent Timcast contributor. Luke, activist, independent journalist. Luke, how would you describe yourself?
I have no freaking clue. I've been doing this for way too long. I'm old. I'm frustrated. It's crazy. And it's just the same. It's like Groundhog's Day almost every single day now, especially when it comes to American foreign policy. So disgruntled, I think is one way of describing.
Wait, are you an immigrant also?
Yep. We immigrated from Poland, and I landed in Brooklyn, New York in the early 90s with my family. And,
I just love that I could tell because you called it Groundhog's Day. So we immigrants get things a little bit wrong. It's Groundhog Day.
All the time. I don't care. I'm going to make it Groundhog's Day because I'm stubborn and I'm Polish. But no.
Like my grandma says, thanks God instead of thank God. And it actually makes more sense to say thanks God.
Right? We're fixing it. We're helping you Americans with your language, which is not that good. The Polish language is one of the hardest languages to learn, but it was my first language. So English was my second language. Spanglish is my third language here in Miami, Florida. And sometimes I still dream and I have conversations with my family in Polish, but I mix up words sometimes. It happens. I'm not autistic. Maybe I am. Who knows?
Russian was my first language as well. English, was my second. I learned English through television largely, Three's Company especially. And when I got to meet Suzanne Summers, who recently passed at the backstage of Fox, I almost kind of lost my mind, but I kept my composure together. The Poles are probably the only people in Eastern Europe who would definitely get like the silver medal in terms of being the victims of totalitarian oppression. Getting it from Germany and Russia, for decades. How much did your family and their experiences inform your current political perspective? I mean, I know the answer, but I'd love to hear details.
Tremendously. I mean, there's so many horror stories of situations and experiences that my grandmother had to go through, who by the way, is still alive. I did a full interview with her. Just sat her down and for hours and hours, I was like, tell me your whole life story. I want to hear all of it from the very beginning. And it made me feel like a little bitch, whining and moaning about our Western first world problems. It made me realize, can we curse here or no?
Yes. Oh, yes, very much so. I like that. I like our idea of oppression is I'm forced to use the wrong pronouns as opposed to I have to watch my brother be imprisoned for no reason.
Yeah. There's another thing called torture and starvation of a population, and the forced extermination of human beings. Because what happened in Poland, a lot of people don't truly understand, especially when it comes to the Soviets coming in, the Germans coming in. Historically, we're not positioned in the best of places. We don't have a lot of defensive borders there to help protect us. So the Polish history is a very turbulent history. It's a very crazy history. The country didn't exist for a very long time. So it's kind of in our blood to be kind of fighters, to be kind of hard-headed individuals, to be individuals that are very kind of nationalistic, because for a very long time, Poland didn't even exist as a country. Yeah. So, coming from Poland, hearing the stories from my grandmother specifically, just absolutely shocked me, because I had no clue, no idea the amount of turmoil, chaos, and trauma that she had to go through as a little child, specifically with SS officers murdering my great-grandfather in front of her. It's her being sent off to a work camp the work camp, sending off my great grandmother off to the Stutthof concentration camp, and then, of course, trying to send her there too. She was very luckily rescued by a family who took her in after, my main great grandmother. Well, I'm butchering the story here. My grandmother explains the story a lot better, but I'm just trying to condense so much
Yeah.
into so little here. But truly, it is a miracle that I am here on this earth, and I don't take my life for granted. I don't. I'm not one of these kind of Western people, because immigrants do have a different kind of mentality. They do have a different kind of perspective on America and the opportunities it provides people, and the 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 freedoms that you have here that you don't have anywhere else in the world. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment. It's so critically important that if we had that everywhere else in the world, there would be so much less drama and issues and problems. So really learning about her story, and then literally going through the Soviets controlling everything, the Germans controlling everything, going through, of course, communism, and going through a situation where even if you had a flyer against the government there, one flyer would
Oh
would
yeah.
end you up in jail for 5 years in jail. uh, Going through situations where you have to figure out which one of your kids is going to eat and which one of them is not going to eat, figuring out very difficult situations where the government is truly taking one of your children, putting them in the freaking gulag, torturing them because they didn't have their paperwork in order. So that was my uncle, by the way, who was actually tortured by the secret police there in Poland. So just hearing those stories, coming here to America, especially in the early 90s, it's tragic, because everything that happened there is slowly encroaching, and the groundwork is slowly being laid ground for it to happen here inside of the United States. And with this kind of slow boiling of the frog, it is absolutely freaking terrifying to see the current state that we are in right now. As, of course, I've been screaming about it for 20 plus years, like, hey, appreciate the freedoms you have. Don't give them up. Don't ever give up your freedoms for security, because you're not going to get either of them. And recently, I had a very interesting conversation that actually brought up a lot of these issues and ideas when I interviewed author Pavlovsky. He's the Canadian preacher there that was arrested in Canada for not shutting down his church during the COVID lockdowns. And his stories were almost absolutely identical to the stories of my family and what they had to go through. I published that interview, by the way, on youtube.com/We Are Change. For some reason, the algorithm really hated it, but it's a very important video when it comes to understanding just how bad it could get, just how desperate people could become, and just how evil governments really are when you give them carte blanche, when you give them the opportunity to do everything in your life. So I think that's a big danger that I think a lot of people need to realize, and why I am an anarchist, why I am calling for personal responsibility and personal freedom, because the only way out of this entire prison planet that is being built all around us is people saying, enough is enough. I'm going to take care of myself. I don't need the government here. I don't need big pharma. I don't need them intervening in my life. I'm going to take hold of my life, make my own destiny. And I think that is truly the will of the human spirit that is at risk right now.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there, and let me get into it. It was funny because yesterday I got into it with some dimwit on Twitter who was like, "Look, you and I both know this anarchism thing is unrealistic and a grift. Like, don't you think we should work toward having like a viable third party? You're making me depressed by the political system. Don't you think a viable third party would be the way to go?" And it's like Canada has three major parties. You have the Bloc Québécois, and then you've got the Freedom Party, whatever it's called, the Libertarian Party. Then you have the Green Party. UK has three viable parties. Germany has six. So I will never understand this answer that well, if two parties bad, three parties good. I also want to tell people that the delusion they have is that governments commit evil as like a last resort, like meaning they'll capture you and you're like a suspected terrorist and you've got this information and they don't really want to do it, but like they're gonna have to torture you because if they don't, like an atom bomb's gonna go off in New York City, right? And that is completely not, and that's maybe how it's portrayed in like movies where most people get their information about how others behave, and that's how they personally would behave. Like many people, if you had someone, you're like, I don't want to torture the guy, but I have no choice. He's going to blow up New York. Like, let me get the pliers. That's not how it works at all. How it works is their preference is sadism and torture, and it's only when they're restrained by some external or internal force that they have to play by the rules. You see it a very easy example of this is if you watch these videos of police body cams and people auditing the cops, when people the cop reads them the Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. It's like, Luke, I go to your house. I'm like, Luke, can I borrow a drill? And you're like, sure. Before I'm like, oh, I can and I will use this against you. It's like, whoa, 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 hey, Malice, I thought we were cool. Maybe I don't want you having this drill.
But
But
here,
when
have
people
this
say,
drill.
yeah, but when people say, I'm not going to answer any more questions, they lose their minds. And it's like, you just told me I have the right to remain silent. Not only is my constitutional right, it's also the smart thing to do. I'm not going to give you information that you will, your own words, use against me. And they fucking lose it. So it's not this idea of like, look, I don't want to interrogate this guy. I'm going to presume he's innocent. It's like, you're in my way. And now anything that is protecting you from me is a problem that needs to be dealt with. So yeah, I am. The other thing I also want to talk about Poland, and I'll plug the book, The White Pill, but this is actually just key if you don't read the book. Poland was so instrumental in bringing down the Soviet Union, and one of the reasons I really hate when people talk about the left or they block, they kind of bundle together like social democrats and communists. It was the lefties in Poland who brought down the regime. It was Solidarity, Lech Walesa. These were union social democrats. These were not any in any sense right of center. They were total lefties, but they were lefties who believed in freedom of speech, the ability to organize, all these other things that we take for granted here in the United States. And also, do want to point out, Pope John Paul visiting Poland after he was told not to come in the late, was it in the late '80s, and having these big prayers. Just huge rallies, and everyone realizing, wait a minute, the commies were lying. They don't have the numbers. There's lots of us who still have faith, both in God and in this country, and that was really key to bringing down the whole edifice.
You bring up so many points. I just want to explode with information right now because that
Please
Pope
do.
gathering happened in 1989, and there was huge swaths of people. I think it was also in 1987. There was a couple of them, but I remember hearing stories of my family talking about just huge amounts of people that would come out of those big government communist block buildings and just engulfing the entire city, standing in solidarity with a lot of the hardworking blue collar middle class people, a part of the unions that did stand up for themselves, that did get shot, that did get murdered, that did get kidnapped. And they still said, you know what, even though the state is going to ruin our lives, torture our leaders, kill our people. There was a famous priest that also got beheaded, thrown into the river. There's so many awful stories of oppression by the government, and the people still saying, you know what, I don't care. In the face of all of this oppression, we are still willing to come out there and show the huge presence and show the huge numbers we have there, because the state hated religion. The state hated
Yes.
that there was some kind of other group outside of them that had an influence on other human beings. So the church, and I think, religion, I think it's an important aspect here, because I think at the end of the day here, there is a lot of spiritual warfare going on that we're not privy to and we're not understanding. And whether you believe it or not, the elites believe it. The elites
Yeah, yeah.
are literally doing rituals and occult practices and summoning demons and doing mock child sacrifice. They're the ones doing all that stuff. They believe in it. You don't have to believe in it, but I think you should when you look at the larger perspective of what's going on here.
Your Welcome is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Now, most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to me and whoever this is this week, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you could be doing right now, which is getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy. You can save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Let's get back to it.
I also wanted to talk about the kind of analogy you brought up with 24, the episode that was on Fox that essentially was a larger psyop, I believe, that was influenced by a lot of people in the intelligence agencies, that was released on the American public right after 9/11, justifying the use of rendition and torture. And the exact scenario was the scenario that was unfolding dramatically on national television. And it was the hit show, and everyone was talking about it. When in reality, what was happening, some goat fucker fucked someone's niece inside of Afghanistan, and they came out and said, hey, that guy's a terrorist. The US government said, okay, we're going to take this guy, bring him over to Egypt, and then literally do horrible, unspeakable, fucked up things to him. And that's the name of fighting for freedom and liberty. That's exactly what was happening there. And it was fucking ridiculous, to the point where there was people there inside of the Afghanistan military, propped up by your tax dollars, raping small children, that were excused and allowed to continue to
Look it
do
up
so.
in the New York Times. This isn't tinfoil
Yeah,
hat. They were called the Body Boys,
exactly.
and basically they considered it not gay if you're fucking boys.
Yep.
And our forces were told we have to look the other way because this is something that these guys are helping us. And this sounds crazy. Assume Luke and I are completely crazy making this up. Google this yourself. This is New York Times reporting and many other outlets reporting this. And when you read it, you're like, wait a minute, why isn't this bigger news than, let's suppose, January 6th or even Hunter Biden's laptop? Like,
Yeah.
we're working with groups that are promoting the rape of children.
And covering it up. And the story gets worse because I actually talked to some of the soldiers that whistleblowed, whistleblowed on this entire scenario. And they're the ones that got punished. They're the ones that got court
Oh, yeah.
martialed. They're the ones that got held responsible for telling the world, hey, your tax dollars are going to financing essentially the larger kind of shisha smoking and rape of small children, a part of the Afghani resistance fighters and freedom fighters that were all bankrolling through your tax dollars as we're taking all the money out of your check. So people had the image, yes, we're fighting terrorism. There's someone that's going to blow us up, and we got to stop them. We got to torture them. When in reality, the people who were being tortured were individuals who had personal squabbles with each other in Afghanistan, renditioned, tortured, horrible things. I mean, they were using battery acid. They were using the children of those individuals being tortured. They were using family members, and they were torturing the family members in front of them. People don't understand how absolutely decrepit and horrible and absolutely evil that entire system was. And for someone to say, someone to come out on Twitter and social media or in real life and say, we just need a little bit of that. I think it's freaking ridiculous. This idea that we just need a little bit of government. We just need a little. Do you need a little bit of all that? No, we absolutely don't. As of course, the whole operation was also run to export poppy and heroin all over the world, as 90% of the world's opium came from Afghanistan. Again, the whole entire situation was nefarious and bad from the very beginning. The perception, the PR, the psychological abuse that American people had to go through to justify it is something that is worth exposing and talking about. And that's essentially when I got my start right after 9/11 in New York City, essentially waking up to this larger kind of programming and propaganda and saying, hey, I don't think they're telling the truth here, as they're using this as an excuse to take away all your freedoms, all your rights, build up a Patriot Act that now is being used up against the same political ideology that started it in the first place, which I think people need. We need to take the Republican dogs that they are, and we need to rub it in. We need to rub their nose into the piss that is the Patriot Act, that is the NSA, that is the Surveillance Act. We need to remind them, hey, motherfuckers, look what you did. You shit here. You shit all over here. We're dealing with this now because you created this problem, and now this problem is being used against you.
Here's the thing. Like, at the time, the argument was, and this, you can regard this as, it kind of makes sense. Like, look, this is extreme, but these are extreme situations. We never had an attack like this before on civilians. We're only going to use it on terrorists. Now, in 2023, I think everyone who's right of center realizes, wait a minute, there is a huge movement in America to brand anyone who is an NRA member God help us as terrorist. People say this openly. The NRA is a terrorist organization. So, and the NRA are basically the Mitt Romneys of gun right groups. Let's put that aside. I said that once on Fox, and everyone laughed in my face. And I went online. I'm like, am I misinformed? And all the gun people are like, no, you're completely correct. Like, but they're just framing it in such a way that the NRA are the extreme, just like Mitt Romney was the extreme right wing. Point being,
They all look
you,
like Elmer Fudd. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, yes. Yeah, point being, all I think most conservatives now appreciate. Wait a minute, if the government gets to define a terrorist would very quickly be someone who's not vaccinated, because now you're engaging in biological terrorism against your neighbor. Someone who won't wear a mask outside. Someone who won't show their ID if they want to go somewhere, because only terrorists need to keep their identity secret. So very quickly you realize when the government says only terrorists, the definition of terrorist will be that who the government doesn't like.
Yeah, you show up to parent-teacher conferences,
Yeah,
you're a
that
terrorist.
literally happened.
Yeah. Record police officers and try to hold them accountable. Terrorist, and
Yes.
the examples of this we could just keep going on. As even back then, even in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, there was already DHS documents saying, oh, if someone believes in the Constitution, if someone calls themselves a patriot, they could likely be a terrorist. And I'm like, why is this? This is not fighting terrorism. This is fighting America. As the
Yeah.
war on terror started, created, more importantly here, robbed and looted this country of all of its money, but more importantly, created more terrorism with it, and then turned its back and said, no, now America's the terrorist nation. Now we have to go after the Americans here because they're the real terrorists now. So the whole war on terror was a Ponzi scheme, was a scam in the very beginning. It is still a scam right now, and it's still being waged. And sadly, the situation happening in the Middle East, I just see it breeding more terrorism. This whole situation is, as I said in the beginning, it's a little bit daunting to keep talking about, because you keep trying to warn people, and it's like sometimes they listen. Sometimes we had a couple victories. It's still worth fighting, but at the same time, the same things keep reoccurring, and I wish just more people would be awoken to it and start seeing it for what it is, and not cling on to this kind of naive childhood like belief that there's some big daddy government that's going to
Yeah.
actually help them and be there for them. And I really do truly think it's so important to talk about anarchism and get these ideas out there, because if you get rid of this illusion, if you get rid of this kind of psyop and this perception that the government is somehow out there for you, looking out for you, and is going to help you, if you get rid of that, you're going to have a lot of individuals who are going to say, hey, no one's really looking out for me. I got to look out for myself. I got to make sure I make the right decisions for myself. I got to make sure I'm doing the right things for me, moving
Oh
away from
God.
central
Oh
control here.
God.
There's the
Oh
creek. Oh my
God.
God. Holy crap. He scared me.
Oh my
There's
God. You've got a homeless person broke in. Luke, where's your gun?
So
I got. He shocks me like this. I woke up like this. I woke up like this, literally.
It's not we are change, it's we are homeless.
Yeah. He said it's not we are changed, it's we are homeless. Sorry, I got the headphones on. Yeah, I got some crazy
I'm gonna have
vagabond.
him on in a few weeks with a special guest. I'm not revealing it yet. I haven't even asked it yet, but I'm sure he'll say yes. One of the things that really I find funny, and I understand this perspective when people say anarchism is utopian, and let's assume that that's true for just sake of argument. To me, what is also utopian, undeniably, is the idea that like 535 Congress people will, for some reason and no incentive, start obeying the Constitution as the person speaking sees it. Like when you ask them what is your path to that, they just have this kind of underpants gnomes like, well, we just got to hold them accountable. And it's like, who's we? Like, people are not constitutionalists. They want to raise their families, and most people prefer to be safe rather than free. I'm very curious about what your path is, how you became an anarchist.
Well, I never really thought about political ideologies and philosophies, especially after 9/11. I never really even gotten into the weeds. I never really saw myself as even being political. But when you kind of look at the larger situation out there, there's a lot of anarchism that no one really likes to talk about. When someone trades raw milk for
Yeah.
eggs at a farm, or if someone barters small pieces of silver for some eggs or some gold back notes or whatever it may be, that's anarchism. People have a lot of anarchy in their life, and when looking at all the other kind of political ideologies, you're pretty much seeing essentially the Bloods and the Crips. You're seeing
Yes.
just crazy, ruthless, sociopathic murderers that are willing to morally have no inclination at all, no caring, no consideration for the fellow man, just for their own political party. And looking at those both political parties, I was like, this is dumb. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I want to have morals. I want to have standards. I want to actually stand for something. I want to stand for family. I want to stand for peace. I want to stand for liberty. I want to stand for individuals deciding their own path in this short time that we have on this earth, and not blowing and attacking each other up because of this larger cult like ideology that is robbing people of their essence and humanity. So it was pretty simple. I was like, okay, who do we have here? Okay, we got George W. Bush here, and we got Al Gore. They're both fucking dumb. They both suck. No, I don't. And then we had George W. Bush, and then we had John Kerry. I'm like, they're both at the same secret society. This is dumb. This is stupid. Why would I vote for them? And then, of course, we had Mitt Romney, another warmonger, another neocon, and then we had Barack Obama. And I'm like, this Obama guy keeps promising good stuff. We'll see what he does. And then again, total war hawk. Again, John McCain. I mean, are you freaking kidding me? We had Trump promised a good game too. I'll be honest here. I wasn't that happy, especially with the the things that he told everyone to get boosted for. But when you're looking at this entire system, it's like, who do you support? I support the people. There's a lot of people who don't vote in America. There's a lot of people disillusioned of politics in America. There's a lot of people who just want to live their life, who just want to be good people with families and want to be blue collar individuals. Why can't we just stand up for those people and those ideas? And I think the best way to do that is through anarchism, because it's the people saying, I'm opting out of this bull crap. I'm not supporting this crap. I just want to live my life and be a normal human being. I'm behind that party. I want to be a part of that organization. And it was a natural kind of transition because of just how corrupted the Democrats are, just how corrupted the Republicans are, the left and right. It's just a gang of individuals that truly are willing to do some really awful things in order to be in power. And I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want my existence, especially looking at my life when I do pass away and when I do get really older. I don't want to look at it and say, yeah, I just did what was popular. I just did, I just went along with
Well,
what.
congrats. No one can ever accuse you of that.
Well, no, I definitely don't have a lot of friends in here. I definitely pissed a lot of people off, criticizing everyone and everything. But I think you have to. You need to, in order to have a level of honesty and decency, to just say, hey, it's fucked up when they do it. It's fucked up when they do it too. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop screwing people over. Stop taking their money. Stop robbing them of their wealth. Stop financing these wars. Why are we going along with this? And I think it's common sense. And I think once people realize it, and once we have more of these conversations, I think it's just going to be inevitable.
So sometimes when I have arguments with people or discussion debates or whatever, and like some things I'm saying just don't get through to them, I always try to look back and be like, okay, what could I have said differently? Why are they having such a mental block? And there's one that I'm specifically have been having for months. And I try to see things from their point of view. Like, what are they missing that I'm not saying correctly? And maybe you could help me out. And this actually happened in Miami. I was on Patrick Bet David's show, and I was explaining to them that anarchism, like you said, is a relationship. It's not a type. It's not like voting, for the Green Party. It's not a different type of Republican. It's a relationship between individuals or things like that. So when people ask me, "Oh, no anarchism has ever worked," I go, "Music is an example of anarchism. Cuisine is an example of anarchism. Like these are binomial nomenclature, scientific notation for animals. Those are all examples of anarchism. There's no government imposed language." The rules, you can use them. You can speak Polish. I can speak Russian. If we don't choose to communicate, that's all right. I can switch languages, so can you. That's also all right. No one is governing the use of language. Like, in a community, obviously there's official languages on a government level, but between individuals, you could say whatever you want in whatever language you choose. And they just kept asking me, "All right, but which country is like the most anarchist?" And I'm like, "It's not like a place, it's a relationship." And it was literally like 3 times, "Which country is the most anarchist?" And I'm like, think of it more like the carnivore diet, right? It's a lifestyle, it's a relationship to how you live your life, it's an ethos. And they're like, "Okay, what country?" And eventually I said, "Okay, Israel." And they're like, "Okay, great." But the point being, like, why do you think so many people are unable to wrap their heads around that anarchism isn't like a different type of government as opposed to a different approach to how you live your life?
That's a very good question, but just even trying to pursue the answer to that question, I personally went to Mogadishu, Somalia, because everyone on the internet said if you believe in anarchy, go to Somalia. Guess what? I went to Somalia and I did a full report there, and I had to hire mercenaries to protect me with AK-47s. And guess what I found? I found a crap ton of government. I found the government of Qatar, the government of Turkey, the Saudi Arabia. All of them had government forces, UN forces. I was on the plane with a guy from the United Nations, poor guy, but the polar opposite of me, who's trying to figure out how to tax the poor people of Somalia to finance the government programs. That I'm like, I was like, the conversation was hilarious. I probably can't share most of it here, but again, what I found in Somalia was a lot of government. But then I also traveled to places like in Charan, in Michoacan, one of the most dangerous areas in all of Mexico. But there was a town there with tens of thousands of people that decided to live by anarchistic principles, community principles, and they were able to stop the bloodshed. They were able to stop the murders. They were able to save a huge, tremendous amount of government resources and money that was essentially going to, of course, the cartels. And very interestingly, when they got rid of the government, they got rid of the police. They also magically got rid of the cartels for some strange reason, as if the two were working together somehow, because they always do work together, and people need to realize that. As far as I think we need to do a better job. I think the burden is on me, you, and everyone else preaching this philosophy. I don't think we did a good job. I think we need to talk about this more. I think we need to challenge people more. I think we need to challenge the absurdities of the state more. I think truly there needs to be a lot of other people who aren't afraid to talk about these issues. And I know a lot of people, and I meet them all the time at conferences, and they're like, "Hey, I support you, but don't tell anyone." I'm like, "Fuck, are you doing? Get the shit. What the fuck?" Like, no, 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 no. You better start saying something, because if you don't, this is why we are where we are at right now. So I think we did a poor job PR wise. I think the word anarchy, a lot of people are allergic to it because a lot of people just use it in relation to Antifa and all these other kind of radicalized leftists who actually want the opposite of anarchy. They want centralization. They want more government. So we truly do have to do a better job talking about these issues. It's still very new to a lot of people. A lot of people
Sure.
are just indoctrinated to a lot of the nonsense out there and to a lot of fear, emotional based, irrational thinking. So the burden's on us. We just got to talk about this more until they finally do get it. Sometimes it might feel like you're talking to a wall, but again, I was someone who wasn't fully aware until someone was actually speaking to me and trying to make me understand the larger kind of basic principles of anarchy. Because for a long time, throughout the majority of my kind of political career, I was like, I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about
Oh,
my philosophy, my ideology, even though I was inherently always anarchistic. But now I kind of, within the last few years, it started to become more forward with it, because I realized what I just described, what other people were going through. People were scared of the kind of association. I don't want to be, deemed someone crazy or a leftist or a radical. And again, it's not radical. It's normal to have good relations with your fellow man.
yeah.
And that's the basic principles of anarchy. So that's the process that I went through. Maybe me describing that process might help some other individuals out there to be more outspoken about this issue. Because if you look at modern day problems, a lot of this could be solved without our participation in it. A lot of it could be solved with us voting with our dollars. A lot of it could be solved with us saying, hey, I don't support this. I don't want to be behind this. No, you do not have my consent to do any of this nonsense. So I think we have an uphill battle. It's not easy, but I think it's worth fighting. And I think this is why I've been more outspoken within the last few years. And I hope people listening who do believe in these ideas of the non-aggression principle and these ideas of just having good relations with your fellow man and consensual relations with your fellow man and woman, I think should be speaking out more about it.
Folks, Barron's is warning the stock market looks like the dot-com boom before the bust, and the Magnificent Seven, all tech stocks, account for more than 25% of 2023's gains. Meanwhile, Fortune magazine is warning that the S&P is heading below 3,000, and two of the biggest stock market crashes happened in October, which was October 1929, and Black Monday, which was 1987. Seasonally, we're entering the best 6-month period for gold and silver, and along with the Fed nearing the end of their rate hikes, gold is poised to skyrocket. JP Morgan and Wells Fargo both forecast gold to hit all-time highs in 12 to 18 months. So call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention my name. That's Michael Malice. And you'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for life IRA and qualifying rollovers. Here's all you got to do. Call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide, or simply go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 7 years in a row. So call 888-505-9845 or just go to malicegold.com and start protecting your money. Let's get back to the show. Do you get as frustrated as like I didn't realize until recently, Dave Smith, who's this very failed comedian you probably haven't heard of, like he was the one who only this year sat me down and is like told me that I'm like the only one in traditionally conservative circles who's making these arguments. And this is going to be new to many of these audiences. And I never really put two and two together. I just kind of took it for granted. And I was like, oh shit, like I better do a better job than just being irreverent, unrelenting douche. One of the issues I am surprised at, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, is people who understand, one of the big arguments by the public school advocates and people like Randy Weingarten is you want everyone to be illiterate, you want people to be dumb, you're against education, and they understand. No, 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 government schools are a bad way to educate people. You're not trying to the scores just even if you had no political opinion whatsoever, the results clearly don't back up what you're advocating, Randy. Like the reading scores that are in the shitter, all these other scores in the shitter. This system is clearly not working the way you're pretending it's working, and they understand that if there was more voucher programs and especially homeschooling and neighborhood schooling, things like that, micro schools, that people be more educated, not less. But when you say, hey, we don't need to have a government monopoly on police, immediately their brain goes, oh, you want people to be able to shoot themselves and shoot each other in the street with no consequences. And even walking through that um kind of scenario, it's like if I'm in Luke's neighborhood and I just go to Luke and shoot him, it's not like Luke's neighbors are going to be like, well, there's no police, so I guess we're just going to let this guy walk around and we're not going to do anything to stop. Like even in that scenario, it doesn't make sense. So why do you think it's so hard for people who can understand perfectly that abolishing government schools means you are in favor of better education and more education, and understand that government monopolies are a very weak way to produce an educated populace? When it comes to security, which is another service that we all need to some extent, their brains just completely shut down and they think you're talking about kumbaya and no one's ever going to hurt anybody.
Yeah, because it's an emotional kind of response here, and a lot of people, they don't logically kind of walk through the steps of what could actually be the larger repercussions here, and what could be the larger effects of let's just say a neighborhood watch. A
Yeah,
neighborhood
yeah,
watch is also extremely anarchistic. It's individuals saying, hey. I'm in a neighborhood. I have a neighborhood watch. I'm going to start participating in it soon because I
yeah,
think it's cool to get to know your fellow neighbor. As soon as I moved into my place here in Miami, I literally got pies and I walked around to all my neighbors and I gave them pies. Like, this is who I am. This is what I do. Hi, let me get to know you. Let me have good relations with you. That right there is going to keep you a lot safer
yeah,
than some random person who's going to show up maybe 15, maybe 30 in California, maybe even an hour to a scene of a crime and then jot down some report and then kind of maybe even give you some attitude about it. So I think truly another big kind of transition that occurred in me was being affected negatively by the state, being beat up by police officers, not having any kind of justice. When I was young and I was still, in the streets of Brooklyn, I was still hanging around, sketchy people, but I think a lot of people now are being affected in such a negative way by the state intervention, whether it's printing money, whether it's them just
oh yeah.
abusing civil liberties and destroying them, that I think more and more people are going to be open to this larger kind of idea, because it just makes sense. It's more practical. It's more of a way where you look at the way things are done now, and it is absolutely absurd. It is absolutely clown world. It's illogical, and people still keep going with it because it's the normal. But the normal changes. The normal always shifts. There's always some kind of transition in society, and I believe right now, especially with the financial mess that we are in, your relations that you have with your neighbors, with your community, are going to be absolutely crucial, because there's going to be a lot of financial pressure. And the only thing that is probably going to help you is you being able to barter, is you being able to practice anarchy, you being able to, of course, watch out for yourself, watch out for your community, and build a sustainable pod network. Dana Martin is here in Miami as well, and she's my good friend. I've been friends with her for many years, and what she's doing when it comes to advocating for homeschooling and setting up networks of parents that
Wonderful.
help each other out homeschool is absolutely critical when it comes to the problems that the state is creating and that they're bringing towards you. So I think the more the state overreacts, the more the state creates more problems for you, the more people naturally will be forced to anarchism and naturally start to practice it. And I think it's an inevitable step. There's also going to be a lot of people who are going to win Darwin Awards. Nothing's going to be
Yeah.
completely safe. Nothing ever is completely safe. And let's just be honest here. Maybe some people do deserve to win Darwin Awards. Maybe gang members should be given one particular day where they get a stadium and they get to take each other out. I mean, if they want to do that, they're going to do it anyway. Why
Yeah.
not just try to limit the civilian casualties and human beings who get caught up in the middle of it? So there's arguments here that I think are very nuanced. Some are very complex. A lot of them are people emotionally react to, but I think absolutely anarchy leads to less human harm. And I think this is why it needs to be advocated more, because there's a lot of harm everywhere. And I think it needs to stop immediately.
One of the things that you mentioned, that the whole thing of Darwinism, I've been spending way too much time watching police body cam videos on YouTube, and it's made me both hate the police more and appreciate the police more.
Yeah.
Because in many cases, they are like, there's a guy who there's this one video which every time I think about it, I get like violently angry. It takes a lot for me to get like to that level, where this guy's disabled and he's having problems with the self checkout, and they manhandle him, throw him to the ground because I guess the employees called a number him, and he's clearly mentally disabled. He's not yelling, he's not drunk or anything like that. And he's just like, I'm just trying to pay. And you hear that guy with his disabled voice, and they're like throwing him in cuffs, and you're just like, what kind of person are you when you see someone who's a child or an elderly person or someone who's disabled and they're having trouble, that your impulse isn't to help them or to figure out the situation, but to put your hands on them? It's just absolutely demonic. And at the same time, speaking of Darwin, there's many of these videos where like the cops are there, they're being extremely polite, and someone's just brandishing a knife, and the cops are like, please put the knife, like they don't want to shoot, they're like, please put the knife down, let's talk. And if you're charging the cops with a knife, I have no sympathy for you at that point. It's just like, what do you expect the cop to do? I did not want any police officer to be injured or to put himself in harm's way. And at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, like, okay, so YouTube has snuff films now, and
Yeah.
we can all watch them at our leisure. And it's like, okay, so we're just watching people getting murdered or killed, rather. And it's just like horrific. I'm curious as to how your opinion of the police has changed over the years.
I've actually started to do tactical training with Miami police officers
Oh,
here
cool.
to get a better understanding. You're invited to come. Anytime you come down here to Miami, I'll take you
I'll be
down to
there,
one of.
the first week of December, so let's do it. I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
kidding.
Let's do some shows here, and then let's also because I just started a new show on rumble.com/we are change that I'm going to be doing a lot of work on. We would love to have you there, and
Done.
then we also have a guest room. Come stay in the guest room. As you can see, I got a lot of vagabonds.
There
Staying.
I'm gonna wake up and Ian's gonna be giving me
Ian's
a
gonna be
very
like
nice
squatting,
massage.
looking at you like, "Hi, do you want to do some DMT?" Uh, so I like my doors,
I
and
love him so much. He's so
yeah,
great.
he's great. Yeah, he was like, "Hey, can I come for a day?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." It's been 2 weeks,
Well,
so
it's like Luke, it's like the Bible. When God says he created man on the 6th day, we don't know that day means a day. It could be an
yeah,
eon.
yeah, exactly, perfect representation of him. He's been awesome. I've been doing the show with him, the Rumble podcast show with him as
Yeah.
well. So he's been really a great addition to steal from the Beanie Man. I told the Beanie Man, you're not getting him back. He's here. He's staying. He loves it here a lot better than the Blair Witch Project in Maryland, where Tim films his shoots. But back to the scenario of the police officers here, because again, I got beat up by the cops before. I was also, arrested 7 times for videotaping and being a journalist. A lot of the times at the whim of
Yep.
politicians saying, "Put him in jail." I don't like that he asked me a question. Put him in jail,
Yeah.
and then they put me in jail, and then they did really inhumane things to me. And the whole jail system is absolutely so inhumane. And what's happening to Owen Schroyer now also deserves a
Oh
lot of
God. Yeah.
attention. That guy just got put into solitary confinement for 6 days, which is absolutely
Solitary.
ridiculous. Yeah, he got put into solitary confinement because of COVID protocols.
Here's what I think, and I'm positive you agree. Unless you are someone who is like an ongoing threat to COs or fellow prisoners, someone who's violent, solitary is torture and needs to be
Exactly.
avoided at all costs. Like,
Exactly.
it's
Look
not
what
even a
happened to
discussion
Julian
for me.
Assange. Look what happened to Julian
Yeah.
Assange. Julian Assange lost his mind. He has been tortured to the point where he's no longer who he was because of that solitary
I had
confinement.
his brother on the show a couple of weeks ago. He discussed it at length. Yeah, people can watch that.
Yeah, absolutely, just evil. I had situations where police officers, for some reason, even when they were told by their superiors or or politicians, specifically the mayor of New York City, Michael Bloomberg. Me and him have a very tattered relationship. He had me personally arrested, but there were situations where they would squeeze my cuffs until blood would stop flowing to my arms, and I would get huge lesions. They would, of course, try to rip my arm. They would baton me as I was handcuffed. One situation that I remember, I was handcuffed and on the ground after just being, batoned a bunch of times by these cops, and I just got pepper sprayed in the face. And I'm like, I'm just a fucking journalist. I'm trying to record what the fuck's happening here. Why are you treating me like I'm freaking Al Qaeda? Why are you treating me like I'm some danger to society when all I did was hold a freaking video camera? And I was thrown in jail. I was strip searched. I was, I was. They even did the thing. I forgot the name of it. It's where they send you from one jail to another jail to another jail to another jail. Also, another kind of abusive form
Oh my God, I'm sorry to
of
hear this.
torture. But yeah, all the videos are on my YouTube channel of just the craziest shit that you could ever imagine. And also me speaking out against police officers who would just brazenly come up to me like, "Stop filming." And I'm like, "The fuck I'm not, motherfucker.
Yeah.
First Amendment, asshole." Let's just, let's just be honest here. It wasn't the best of relationships between me and authority figures, because when you go through these kind of events, how can you not be emotionally
Yeah, of course.
manipulated when it comes to your perception of all of them? And then I had other situations where I was on the front lines and there was big fights, and then police officers literally were like, "Hey, I know you. I like your YouTube channel."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then I gotten to know some police officers. And again, police officers are just human beings. People need to understand they're not all bad. They're not all good. The stats and the data, though, highlighting them and their personal relationships is a little daunting. Let's just be honest here. But I think there are some individuals that are incredible, that do risk their lives, that actually do it for the right reasons, do try to help people, and are salt of the earth, amazing human beings that the world is a better place because of.
Yeah,
Um,
when I say that every cop's a criminal, a lot of these conservatives come back at me and they're like, the percentage of cops who are corrupt is actually really small. And I'm not arguing that point at all. I don't think that like some huge chunk of cops are on the take and you're being bribed by the local thing. What I meant is they're enforcing laws that are grotesquely unconstitutional against freedom, and they're doing without a pause in their step. So it doesn't matter
and
how
they're doing
kind
it
or
violently and enthusiastically. And I'm like,
yes, so it doesn't matter how polite or how well they treat their family, that is a crime. That's the problem. It's the quote unquote good cops who are obediently enforcing ridiculous and outrageously authoritarian laws that are the problem. The ones who are bribed are always going to be a relatively small percentage and can be dealt with. It's not that big of a deal. And people can't seem to get that point, because when they hear bad cop, they always think crook in the sense of someone who's bribed or someone's planting evidence, which does happen. And I got to tell you another thing that you must be very happy about. Thanks to this like body cam footage and everyone having their own camera, back in like let's suppose the 80s, this idea of cops planting evidence, it's like, okay, yeah, everyone's in jail because the cop planted evidence. This never happens. And then when you see it happen more than once with video with the cop's own body cam that he forgets it's on, please look at YouTube, pretend I'm crazy, just go look yourself, and you see it happening, you're like, holy crap. Like, this is something I had assumed was ridiculous, and I don't blame you for assuming it's ridiculous. And then when you see it happen repeatedly, you're like, okay, I was completely wrong about what I thought the limits of police bad behavior were.
Yeah, it's not the 80s. It was
Right.
the 2000s that the transition happened. I still grew up in a day and age where, filming the police, if you would film the police, they would beat the crap out of you. Like they
Yeah.
would literally walk over and then they would delete your camera footage. They deleted my camera footage a bunch of times, by the way. But there was no way to upload automatically. There was no way to be live. And I was a part of that transition. And I think it was a very important transition. But at the same time, what we saw during COVID with cops going around and shutting down small businesses, that right there, I mean, cops have
Yeah.
discernment. You have a choice. You have a decision to make. Are you going to shut down grandma's store while allowing Walmart to be open? You're going to do that? You're going to shut down that gym for helping people exercise and get in shape? You're going to arrest people for being in a park? I can't excuse that. I'm just sorry. I just can't.
You know what I
That
tell
right there.
people? I say,
Yeah.
"How much money would Gavin Newsom have to pay you to tell a little girl that she has to shut down her lemonade stand?" And when you put in those terms, all of a sudden it's like, "Oh shit, okay." You're gonna have to put a gun to my head before I make a little girl cry because she's fucking selling lemonade on the street.
What's up, guys? I'm Brendan Schaub. If you love everything mixed martial arts, I'm talking UFC breakdowns, UFC picks, one championship picks, Bellator, PFL, you name it, your boy breaks it all down. Tune into The Schaub Show, available every Monday wherever you listen to your podcasts. The Schaub Show. Enjoy.
So yeah, it's a very complex relationship to say the least. I do believe a lot of people in the police department do deserve criticism for not having and not using discernment enough. I do believe there are some officers that do deserve a lot of credit. I am close to some police officers, and I do train with them. I do learn from them, and they do have an extremely difficult job. And at the same time, there is kind of this other movement that's been very unjust to them as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have cops creating injustices. There's citizens that are creating injustices against cops, especially
Yes.
now with what we saw with Derek Chauvin and the fentanyl. And we see a lot of cops that are being punished for not doing anything wrong. And I'm like, hey, okay, maybe this is a swing back in the totally wrong freaking direction. But again, this only breeds more problems within society. Cops hating citizens, citizens hating cops. I think we got to stop with the hate. We got to understand from a human level, they're just random human beings. They could be a random good person. They could be a random bad person. It doesn't matter. You still treat them like a stranger. They're a stranger. Be smart. Training with them, they go through a tremendous amount of pressure. When you were describing that knife, and we do specific training drills with some of my friends here. If you have a knife, we have fake knives that we use, and we have fake firearms that we use. You have a knife. Someone is within 15 minutes. That knife is way more lethal than a gun. Way
Yes, yes.
more powerful, way more effective. It doesn't stop shooting. You don't need to miss. It's absolutely crazy how much stress and pressure a lot of the police officers go through, especially when it comes to dealing with some of the worst aspects of society, some of the worst human beings in our society, some of the biggest scumbags in our society. And it's a lot of stress, it's a lot of pressure. And going through some of the training drills where even someone comes at me, we're in a stressful situation, there's a situation that I'm dealing with, someone comes at me, pops a cell phone at me. There's some students that literally take out the firearm and shoot the person with the cell phone. And I can see so many people making a lot of the mistakes unless you train effectively and adequately. And sadly, a lot of these police officers don't train enough, and they
Is
don't
it
get the proper training, and they don't get the right training. So
is it true that when you showed up to train with them and they say, "Luke, hey Luke, how's it going?" You said, "I don't answer questions," and am I being detained?
I play the fifth. that that's a good analogy, but no, I wasn't that clever, but I'm going to use that. I think it's important for individuals to learn self defense. I think it's important
Yes.
for people to train. This is why I've taken it upon myself to be responsible for myself and my own safety. I think we need individuals to do that a lot more effectively. And I you know again, even though I was hurt by a bunch of police officers, I now know that I shouldn't just judge all of them, and I shouldn't just treat all of them like they're the ones who are going to always try to screw me over, victimize me. Again, it's a stranger. Any stranger could be it could be anybody. Could
Yeah.
be a sociopath, could be insane, could be the nicest person in the world. Again, it's a stranger. Treat them like a stranger.
And also recognize that even if they are the nicest person in the world, that job hardens you because
Yeah.
you're only calling the cops when there's a problem. So you're
Hmm.
not calling the cops when, like, hey, like we're having a picnic, come over, like let's share the community. So after a while, if you see people at their worst, it's going to do a number on you. I don't care who you are. If you see people hitting their kids or beating their wives or like stabbing each other, it's just human nature. It's going to harden you, and that has a cost. If you become hardened, then that's going to have a deleterious effect when dealing with someone who is a normal, law-abiding, decent citizen who's just trying to be normal. You just immediately often will go to 10, and I don't know how to work around that. You also see that with military people. They come back and they have PTSD, and you don't blame them. Like they always have to be worried that is that guy about to fucking pull an IUD or is he going to shoot me?
Yeah, or woman cops. I don't know if we
Yeah.
should even get into that, but yeah, I think you just got to be respectful and you got to treat people like you want to be treated. And if a police officer tries to, do anything, be like, hey, respectfully, I don't know who you are. Please respect my privacy. Please respect my ability to not be searched. I don't want to be searched. No, thank you.
Luke, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
I like the whimsical nature of your questions, and it's always fun to have a conversation with you because you always bring up, oh, you're the loose change, and I like those comments, and I like the ball busting. I'm a ball buster myself. I think it's that New York City kind of attitude, and it's nice to kind of revisit. And you're welcome here in Miami anytime. Guest room is all yours. We'll do some tactical training. We'll do some shows. So it's fun to have a conversation where people don't take themselves too seriously, and I think you do a good job at that.
You are welcome.